I have experienced Jesus in ways that I never thought would happen. I experienced Jesus protecting me when we were on a family road trip and I was on the road to Des Moines and I gave the keys to my son so he could learn how to drive. And I'd been driving 30 hours the whole trip, and 30 minutes later, I had a grand mal seizure out of the blue. Ended up in the hospital and ended up ultimately being diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. Jesus took us through that experience. And then we came home, and through the provision of Jesus, I ended up being diagnosed with a type of genetic lung cancer that there are only 150 to 200 people in the world that have this specific subtype. And I've lived in Denver my entire life. And as I was diagnosed, we realized that the premier doctor for this type of lung cancer is here in Denver. And I don't believe in coincidence. I believe that God ordains and God provides, and He has provided every step of the way of this now going on 19-month journey for me and my family. He has come in real form with hands and feet and surrounded us. I am so grateful for the people from this church. When we get up there and do baptismal vows, it makes me cry. I'm going to cry now because when we all stand and we vow to stand around those kids that are being baptized, I have seen people of this church come around my kids and take them out to coffee and talk to them and say, "How are you really doing?" And to have those godly people speak into my kids' lives, and to see guys at prayer breakfast come around my husband and talk to him and pray for him and let him know he's not alone. I have been so provided for by real people putting Jesus on. Here at CCPC, I don't even know how to put it into words.
Is Jesus real to you?
Absolutely. I could never have imagined going through this journey, and now I'm almost grateful for it because I have seen so much of God with skin on. I have seen so many things that are unexplainable, but yet when I look, every day I see, Lord, thank you for the miracle of waking up and being able to serve you another day.
That was amazing, Cheryl. Thank you for sharing that with us. Good morning, Cherry Creek. My name is Todd Kleinans, and I am honored to be one of your elders on session. Here now a reading from the book of John. You may follow along on page 1648 of your pew Bible if you'd like. John 1:43 through 50. Jesus calls Philip and Nathanael. The next day, Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. Finding Philip, he said to him, "Follow me." Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida. Say that 10 times fast. Philip found Nathanael and told him, "We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law, and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." "Nazareth? Can anything good come from there?" Nathanael asked. "Come and see," said Philip. When Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said of him, "He is truly an Israelite, in whom there is no deceit." "How do you know me?" Nathanael asked. Jesus answered, "I saw you while you were still under the fig tree before Philip called you." Then Nathanael declared, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus said, "You believe because I told you I saw you under the fig tree. You will see greater things than that." May God add his blessing to the reading of this word.
Let's pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord God. Would you set aside the man in the pulpit and become the voice from heaven, that we would submit ourselves to your word. In Jesus' name, amen. We just saw demonstrated here a confession that Jesus is still reaching into the lives of people. These young adults, in order to be confirmed in our church, have to talk about the fact that they have met Jesus, that they have found Jesus, or Jesus has found them. There's some sort of encounter. And so our Lenten series is really about confirmation. It's about all of us reevaluating what does it mean to run into, to meet the Lord. That's a pretty lofty goal, wouldn't you say, that we say we want to have an encounter with God? I mean, God's reasonably big, and he's a lot different than we are. The scriptures are full of examples where it tells us we can't quite figure out God. Isaiah 55, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. And then again in Psalm 40, many, O Lord my God, are the wonders which you have done, and your thoughts toward us. There is none to compare to you. In the book of Job, there is this amazing conversation between a human and the creator of that human. And he says, can you discover the depths of God? Can you discover the limits of the Almighty? They are as high as the heavens. What can you do? Deeper than Sheol. What can you know? Its measure is longer than the earth and broader than the sea. And Job 37 reiterates, he does great things which we cannot comprehend. Paul in Romans declares, oh, the depth of the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable his judgments and his paths beyond tracing out. Who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been his counselor? Over and over again, Scripture reminds us that God is amazing beyond our knowledge. And yet there's a tension in Scripture too. This amazing God is a God of revelation. He wants to reveal himself. And so he somehow pours himself fully into a man, Jesus, and he comes to meet us. He walks on this planet with us. He encounters real people. We understand a little bit of this unsearchable God because he has become searchable. He's become real. We understand some of this eternal, awesome, kind of wispy, mysterious spirit God who created us because Jesus has become flesh and moved into our neighborhoods. That's the tension of Christianity. And so when we talk about this hunger, this desire in all of us to encounter Jesus, we're always caught in between. There's something about Jesus which is bigger than us that we'll never really figure out. There is mystery in the person of Christ. But there's something so real that when we feel it, sense it, experience it, know it, when it ripples into our hearts, we are changed. I want to read to you this story and try to illuminate a little bit of one Jesus encounter. It's the early part of John. We're using John's gospel to pick these encounters, and John has just told us about John the Baptist saying he's not the Messiah, but Jesus is the one. And then several of John's followers, John the Baptist's followers, begin to follow Jesus, and they go and they stay with him. They're all from Galilee. And when we get to our text we We see Jesus calling the very first disciples, Peter and Andrew, to come follow him. And then we get to verse 43. It says, the next day, Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. Now, he's in Jerusalem. He's come down for a high holiday, and they've gone a little bit outside Jerusalem to the place where John is baptizing, right at the Jordan River there. It's about a 40-minute, maybe a 50-minute walk, and everybody that's anybody from Jerusalem has walked down to see this prophet. We haven't had a prophet for 400 years, and there's one out in the desert. Come here, and John is calling people to repentance. He's calling them to get into the water and come up different. Not to get in as a Gentile and come out as a Jew, but to get in as a person of sin and to get out as a person hungry for God. And so Peter and Andrew and some of the other fishermen from the north up in Galilee have come down to probably the same festival. We don't know which one it is. And they've gone out to see the prophet. And while they're there, Jesus is baptized. And they begin to follow him. It's a lovely picture. They come to Jesus and they just start following him as he leaves the Jordan River, and he turns around and they say, he says, what do you want? And they say, Rabbi, where are you staying? What are they asking? Can we come with you for a while? Can we listen to you for a while? We're told by the writer of John, that it's getting to be dark, and so Jesus says, come and see. I'll show you where I'm staying. What is he really saying? Come be with me. Come hang with me. Come listen to me. And so the next day, he wakes up, and somehow over that night, they've convinced him, come home with us. They're from the Galilee, so it tells us the next day Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. Peter and Andrew and these new disciples obviously have said, well, Jesus, why don't you come north with us? You can stay with us for a while. You can be a part of what we're doing. We don't want to leave you. And so he decides to go to Galilee. Finding Philip, he said to him, follow me. We spiritualize that, and there's probably a lot in that whole phrase of follow me, but I think what Jesus is saying to Philip is, I'm going to Galilee. Are you coming? You gonna be with me? Come with me. And Philip is from Galilee. He's from a little fishing village called Bethsaida, right up on the north shore of the Sea of Galilee. And so what Jesus is saying, are you coming home with me? Are you coming north with me? Verse 44, Philip, like Andrew and Philip, was from the town of Bethsaida, which means the place of the fish. So Philip says to Jesus, yes, sir, but can I have a minute? And he goes and he looks for his best friend, Nathanael. Verse 45, Philip found Nathanael and told him, we have found the one Moses wrote about in the law and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. I love the way that Philip introduces Jesus to Nathanael. He tells him a lot about him. The first thing he tells him with is, this is the one that's in the Old Testament. Most scholars believe that Nathanael was probably a pretty intense Bible student. There's a whole bunch of clues in this text for that. And one of the first ones is that when Philip comes to him, he says, you know all that stuff you've been reading? This is the guy. This is the one. You know all that stuff you've been reading about in the law and the prophets and the Old Testament? We found him. This is the one. It's interesting that he's trying to convince Nathanael to come with him, and he starts with Scripture. The one of the Scriptures, Nathanael. Lets me believe that Nathanael has a high view of Scripture. And then he calls him Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. We have first names and last names in how we talk to people. And in that culture, in that day, they had only first names. And so I'd be known as Brad. But there'd be a lot of Brads, maybe, and so I'd be Brad, son of Dawn. Let's identify his father. Let's identify the lineage. Very, very Jewish, to figure out who your dad is. And so he is Jesus, son of Joseph. Now, we all know, and they will soon find out, that he isn't really the son of Joseph. But in his introduction, they say, this is Brad, son of Dawn, this is Jesus, son of Joseph. And then they would add one more piece in case there's too many Brad, son of Dawn. They'd say of Aurora or of Littleton. They'd add where you were from. So Nathanael says, first, he's the one that we've read about in the scriptures, the Messiah. And then he says, but he's a man. Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. It probably creates a tension. I know it does in Nathanael. Because look how he responds, verse 46. Nazareth, can anything good come from there? Nathanael asks. For many years I've read that and I thought that maybe Nathanael just was biased against the town of Nazareth. And that's really probably pretty easy because Nazareth was where all the poor working people lived. It's a little hillside village. There was nobody spectacular from Nazareth. And the people who lived there weren't known for how smart they were or their education or anything. They were kind of the bad part. It'd be a little bit like saying Brad from 5 Points in Denver, or Brad from Southie in Boston, or from the east side of Chicago. It's a place that you don't think of, wow, that's really good. But I think there's something else going on here too. I don't think it's just because it's not a very reputable part of the country. I think that Nathanael's a Bible scholar. And you know what he says? Nazareth's not in the Bible. It's not in the Old Testament. Nowhere. It's not ever mentioned. If the Messiah was going to come from Nazareth, don't you think they'd have mentioned it? Can any good come out of Nazareth? It's not even mentioned in all of the scriptures. I think that's the first truth that I want us to gain about encountering Jesus today. Encountering Jesus is always beyond our expectations. We have this picture of what it's like to find the Lord. Maybe it comes from what it was like when we were younger, or what we've watched on TV or in a movie, or what our grandparents or our parents told us about it. We all have these ideas that if Jesus would show up here and now, this is what it would look like and this is how it would happen. But it almost never works that way. In almost every encounter in Scripture where Jesus meets people face to face, they are surprised. He doesn't do what he's expected to do, and he doesn't say what he's expected to say, and he comes into them, and it's almost like he's his own person, like God or something. And he comes and he surprises them. Nathanael has this view that the Messiah cannot come out of an unmentioned town of blue-collar workers called Nazareth. Philip, I think, teaches us a lot about evangelism, about sharing the gospel. He doesn't try to come up with an argument. He doesn't try to explain who Jesus is. He just says something very simple. Come and see. Come and see. What's interesting to me, it's the same thing Jesus said the night before. Where are you staying, Rabbi? Well, come and see. Now he says the same thing to his best friend Nathanael. Nathanael, just come and see. One of my best friends is a pastor in Iowa. And when he lived here in town, one day I told him that my wife and I were looking to move, buy a new house. And we were open, and this is kind of what we were looking for. And a couple days later, I got this phone call from Steve, and he said, you got to come. I'll meet you here's the address. Meet me here. I said, no, tell me about it. He said, I found the house. I said, no, tell me about it. He said, no, just come see. Just come see. You'll know, or it'll be the right house, or it won't be the right house. I don't want to explain it all. Just come. I said, okay, and I met him. And we lived there for 9 years because it was the right house. It's actually my wife's favorite house out of all the houses we've been privileged and gifted by God to live in. It's her favorite house. That's what Phillips says. Come see this guy. Come be with him. Verse 47, when Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said of him, "Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." It's easy for us to brush past that. The core meaning of that is Jesus sees Nathanael coming, and he says loud enough that Nathanael can hear, "Here comes an Israelite who has no deceit in him." But you miss it. If you're not Jewish, you don't get what he's really saying. He's not just saying he's an honest, straight shooter. That is a part of what he's saying. But it's a pun, or almost a poem, or a smiling funny in the Hebrew. What he says, here truly is an Israelite. Israel, if you're a Jew, Israel is the name given to Jacob, who was called the deceiver. It's the new name given to Jacob the deceiver, is you're now the one who hangs on to God. And so he says, here it truly is the one who hangs on to God, reminding Nathanael probably of the story of Jacob, in whom there is no deception. You see, your lineage comes from a patriarch who was known as the cheater, the deceiver. But here comes one in whom there is no deception. And they probably all smiled a little bit. They get that it's a biblical illustration to this history. It'd be a little bit like if I said, oh, you're a Canadian who skates straight. That would mean nothing to you, but if you're from Canada, you know it's a hockey illustration, right? Or if somebody said, I'm from the United States, say, oh, you're probably a lineage of Washington that didn't ever chop down a cherry tree. You know, there's kind of a background story to it. It's Brad Strait who really is trying to be that. You see, he's talking, and it strikes Nathanael at a very deep level, because he's now meeting the guy that his best friend has just said is the Messiah, and look how he responds. Verse 48. How do you know me? How do you even know me? Wow. This doesn't seem very sweet. It's pretty straightforward. I think Nathanael's one of those guys who just says what he's thinking. He's pretty upfront, black and white. Here's the truth. Here's what's going on. And he just says it. How do you even know me? You just said, I'm from the lineage of Jacob, but I'm not a deceiver. How do you even know that? How do you even know that? That's probably the second truth that I want to pull out of this text for you to apply. Encountering Jesus exposes the truth about us. He knows more than we think he knows. Let me pause here for just a second and talk about Lent. Lent is a church season that allows us to realize that God is reading our mail and watching our videos. He sees every Facebook post that we make. He sees every television show we watch and every computer page we go to. He sees the truth about us. He's God. He sees everything. Now, that can make me feel ashamed. That can make me feel sad. Lord, there are a lot of things in my life I don't really want to even think about that you were there or that you were watching. One of the most godly men that I know in this church came to me several months ago, and he had a very simple question. He said, Pastor, I need to know something about heaven. I said, okay. He said, will my mom know how sinful I was when we get to heaven? I think he had this horrible vision of they're going to run videos of our sin, and his mom would have to watch it. And he was super serious. I don't want my mom to know all the bad choices I made. It would kill her. And I could say, get it. get it. I don't want you guys to know all the fallenness that is in your pastor. I don't. God knows. I could say to him, I don't think she's going to know. Because there's no crying in heaven, and every mother would cry a lot if they knew all of our sins. But the Lord knows the truth about us. And Lent is a season where we confess the truth about ourselves. Lord, you know I am weak here. Lord, you know I struggle here. And in this preparation for the forgiveness that flows in a very special way at Easter, he wants us to be honest, to look at ourselves truthfully and say, Lord, you know the truth. Search me. How do you know me, Nathanael asks. It's a good question for us to say to the Lord, Lord, yes, you know me. Jesus answered, I saw you while you were still under the fig tree, before Philip called you. I'm not quite sure what that means, but something interesting occurs right after it, because Nathanael says, Rabbi, you are the Son of God, you are the King of Israel. That simple phrase, I saw you under the fig tree, triggers something in Nathanael. And I think it helps if you remember that all of the things that are being said here are being said to somebody who is honest and true and probably caught up in his scriptures. So what did Jesus see Nathanael doing under the fig tree? We don't know. It doesn't tell us. But many scholars think that he was probably having his quiet time under the fig tree. Let me show you a few. Leon Morris, Oxford scholar from a few years ago, said, in the Jewish culture, the fig tree is a symbol of faith. Its shade was certainly used as a place for prayer and meditation and study. It seems probable that Nathanael had had some outstanding experience of communion with God in the privacy of this place. Maybe Nathanael was just crying out, Lord, what do you want to do with me? Lord, would you show yourself to me? Lord, would you come? Maybe that's what Nathanael's saying in his prayers under the fig tree. Maybe he's reading Isaiah 53 or some other messianic passage. And he's saying, Lord, I don't understand this. What does this mean? Show me. I want to know the truth. We don't know exactly what he's doing, but the whole illustration of under the fig tree says something to Jewish culture. I saw you doing something outside under the fig tree. John MacArthur concludes it this way. Most likely the fig tree in question was the place where Nathanael studied and meditated on the Old Testament scriptures. Not only did Jesus supernaturally see Nathan's physical location, but he also saw into his heart. So what's the reality? Something in what Nathanael had cried out under the fig tree was answered by the very presence of Jesus. He comes and he says, how do you know me? And Jesus says, when you were under the fig tree crying out, I saw you. I saw you. He doesn't go to Nathanael, let's talk about what you did 8:15 the other night when you weren't very nice to that person. He doesn't list out his sins or his struggles or his fallings. He goes to the hunger of Nathanael's heart. You're a man without deceit. You want the truth? Here's the truth. I heard you. I saw you in your prayer time. When you cried out to me, I was the one listening. Is it any wonder that Nathanael declares, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. Something so dramatic happens in that exchange that Nathanael knows I'm not only understood, but you are the God I have cried out to. And there's a transfer of allegiance. When these young people stood up here today, it's really about a transfer of allegiance, saying, we want to, in front of our church, say, we follow Jesus. We believe in the Lord. Changes everything. That's what Nathanael says is, oh, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. Now, here's another clue that maybe Nathanael's pretty good in his Bible because it's an exact quote from Psalm 2, where God says, I've installed my king on Zion, my holy mountain, and you are my son. Nathanael's answer to Jesus is to quote scripture back and say, this scripture is about you. It's about you. Maybe that's what Nathanael was reading. Lord, I desire to meet you. I want to see you. And as I read the psalm, I want to see your king on Zion. I want to see the son that you have chosen. I want to know him. And Jesus says, when you were doing that, I was watching and listening and caring. What an amazing thing to know that we have a God who doesn't just check and watch all of our bad videos like somebody from 48 hours or 60 minutes, but he listens to the cries of our hearts, to our prayers and our struggles and our hungers. He listens. He listens as the Messiah, the Savior, not as the judge and condemner, but as the one who saves us. I love this. Jesus in verse 50 says, you believe because I told you I saw you under the fig tree. You will see greater things than that. He affirms him, but then he goes on, and here's the last point I want to give you. Encountering Jesus opens overwhelming promises for us. Look at what Jesus says. You believe because I told you I saw you under the fig tree. That's nothing. That is nothing. I got stuff planned. You have no idea. You're going to be with me when I'm going to raise somebody from the dead and heal the blind and walk on water. You think it's a big deal that I know what you were praying this morning. I am going to show you far more. And so I think what happens is they start down the road, because John, in telling this, in verse 51, add this phrase. He then added. It's almost like it's a second thought of Jesus. He's just said, you're going to see greater things. And then I have this picture that they're wandering toward Galilee, and Nathanael's in. He's in. He's off to see what's going to happen in Galilee. And Jesus turns around, and this is what he says. Very truly I tell you, you will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. Nathanael, you think it's a big deal that I saw you under the fig tree. You're going to see greater things. You know what? You're even going to see angels ascending and descending. Now, you remember what that biblical illustration comes from? Same guy, Jacob, at Bethel, has a dream, and he sees God's angels moving up and down a ladder. What Jesus says to Nathanael, the Jacobite with no guile, with no deceit, you are going to see it again. And only this time it won't be at a place, but it'll be to a person. And he uses the messianic title, the Son of Man. I think that we all need a new Jesus encounter. I don't think it's going to look like you expect it to. Cheryl probably didn't choose that, right now I'm going to, what I really want to see happen is that I get to have a grand mal seizure. I don't think that's what you expected or hoped for or would have ever prayed for. But in the middle of that, for a small period of time, you're not driving. And the car doesn't careen off the road as you have a seizure, and you don't die. The Lord puts this thought in your head. Why don't you have your son learn how to drive? And he gets a chance to be the one who guides his family through a difficulty. And then God plants you among people who can be there, doctors who know more than anybody else on the... God is at work, my brothers and sisters, all around you. And he has far more ahead of you than you can even imagine. You want to encounter Jesus? You have no idea what he's going to show you. You have no idea where he's going to take you. You have no idea what he can do with you. Our view of our lives is so limited, just like Nathaniel's. And what he says is, you're going to see some things that are going to blow your mind. Come with me. Let's take a walk. Let's go to Galilee. I think he's saying to us the same thing. I'm here. I want to show you who I am. I want to show you the truth about yourself and the truth about me. And then, how about we take a walk and I show you what I've got promised, planned for you. It is going to blow your mind. Let's pray. We're a bit uncomfortable, Lord, with the whole process of Lent and self-examination, but what a privilege to know that we have a God who loves us enough to die for us, and so that any evaluation you make of the sordid details of our darkness always comes from the point of a God who so loved us that he would die. Thank you for that. I ask that you would, in this Lenten season, show us the truth about ourselves. Show us that you're right there, and help us to be better. Not to earn more of your love, but simply to shed more of our baggage. Walk more upright and clean in the path you've laid for us. Hear your voice clear, Lord. Help us to change in this Lenten season to be more godly and like you. Thank you, Lord, that as we encounter you, you have things planned that we can't even dream about. Come do that in our families. Maybe we have things that we don't think can happen. Lord, well, that person will never accept the Lord. That person will never get off the booze. That person will never be nice. That person will never. Lord, maybe your view is bigger. Oh, Lord Jesus, come into the hard places of our lives and bring your faithful promises. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.